When I first became chair of the Senate Ag Committee, I was really excited. These are issues that are so critically important, not just to our upstate economy, but to making sure that we all have access to locally sourced healthy food. And I think we've never realized how important that was really until COVID started. And that really laid bare the challenges of our supply chains and how important it is to make sure that everybody has equal access to locally sourced healthy food. And so we thought, what better way to make sure that we could start to forge the strong relationships with our agriculture community. We as senators could listen and hear the issues firsthand and start to figure out how we can work best together to make sure that we move this issue forward, that we can have a robust and strong agricultural sector here in New York State. So I want to say thank you to the senators who have joined us today, again, for our first ever Ag Listening Tour. We are joined by Senator Comrie, Senator May, Senator Brisport, and I think we will have a few more joining as we go, but we've also got staff from the Senate Ag Ranking Member, Senator Barrow, as well as from Senator Biaggi's office. And we are also joined by the Executive Director of the Senate Commission on Rural Resources, Hal McCabe. And we are just so thankful and excited to be able to have this forum and to kick this off. And so thank you all for joining us, for being on the Ag Committee, and for caring about the state of New York agriculture. And with that, we are going to have speakers. We'll have about 3 minutes to speak, and then we will have a few minutes for questions from the senators if we have any. So with that, I would like to turn it over to our first speaker, Dan Egan from Feeding New York State.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you to all the other senators. I really appreciate you spending time on this today. We appreciate the opportunity to talk about this problem. I think we can all agree it's been a pretty tough year. I don't care what your job is. It's been a very rough year with so many people displaced by the pandemic, so many people sick, losing family members, not able to visit family members. And you've all seen the people in line at food pantries waiting around the block or waiting in their cars for hours, just trying to get food. And it's really unacceptable that that should happen in the United States in 2021. We're the wealthiest, most dynamic economy in world history. We're able to feed not only ourselves, but a huge chunk of the world's population with something like 2% of our workforce working in agriculture. So it's not right that anyone should be hungry at this time. But what we saw this year, what was exposed by the pandemic, not created by the pandemic, but exposed by the pandemic, was hunger here in New York State. It revealed a problem we have. Before the pandemic, there were 2 million New Yorkers who were hungry, who didn't know where their next meal was going to come from, who were using food pantries and shelters and soup kitchens just to get their daily bread. Now that's 3 million. That's a 46% increase since 1 year ago. In response to that, the 10 food banks in Feeding New York State have increased our distributions of food over 60%. In some parts of the state, it's 100%. How did we do that? Well, we could not have done any part of that without the incredible farmers here in New York State who raise such great quality food. We've been partners for decades. I got to mention Harvest for All here, which is how we keep track of donations, not sales, donations of food from our farmers here in New York State. It's such a hard year, and yet the number of pounds of food donated this year through Harvest for All was actually up compared to last year. It was over 7 million pounds. That's just incredible generosity. We couldn't do what we do without our farmers. Another key component was Nourish New York. And of course, Nourish New York is a great connector between the food bank network and farms. The state was terrific, funding that at about $35 million. This past year, we used that to purchase over 17 million pounds of top quality New York State food. Over 4,100 farms benefited by that program, got some income from Nourish New York and HIPNAP, which is the Department of Health's longstanding anti-hunger program that provides us help with our operations. So it's been a tough year, but a good year in the sense that we've strengthened relationships and built new relationships with some farms we didn't know very well. We think that's terrific. We want to continue that. So we have to look at the future. What does the future hold? You know, someday this pandemic is going to be over. But what does that mean? Does that mean we go back to how it was before? I don't think we can do that because remember, before meant 2 million people who didn't know where they were going to get their next meal. So we can't do that. What we're asking, senators, is that we put Nourish New York into the budget. We make this a permanent part of the landscape. It's an important agricultural support. It's an important support to people who are hungry. It helps create that market so that we can work together. We'd like to see $100 million in that program this coming year. Sounds like a big number. It's about $30 for each person who's hungry right now, so it's not much at all. We'd also like to see HIPNAP increased by $16 million. It's a $35 million program right now. You might recall earlier I said the number of people in need was up 46%. You apply that statistic to HIPNAP, that's where you get 16 million. I would bring it to a $51 million program. I think that's a modest response to what's going on now. I could talk all day about this. I visit food pantries and food banks and I see the work all the time, and I've visited our incredible farms. It blows me away. My grandfather was a dairy farmer, but nothing like the kind of work going on today on New York farms. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. And again, I really thank you for the opportunity today.
Thank you, Dan. Really appreciate it. The work that you are doing to make sure that we are feeding people across the state is so critically important. So thank you. I don't see any hands. I will give it a moment in case there is. But we agree that we think the Nourish New York program is very important this year. And, you know, as we now have both said, you know, this crisis has laid bare a critical issue that had been plaguing our communities for decades. And one of the silver linings of this might be that we see that and we have to face it in a real way and come up with solutions to make sure that everybody has access and equal access to healthy, locally grown food. So thank you so much for your testimony today. We really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Troy Bishop, I believe, from Bishop Family Farm in Oneida County.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Well, good afternoon, senators, and thanks for your time. Coming to you from snowy upstate New York. I'm representing Bishop Family Farm in Deansboro. We're a 6th generation New York State century farm, and we custom graze beef and provide soil health and water quality benefits from our pasture system. We enhance our environment for the wildlife, and we have a place for our grandchildren to thrive. So I'd like to talk to you or suggest imagine a New York farmer as an ecosystem service provider, building resiliency on the land and mitigating climate change, as well as providing food. It's a ongoing regenerative agricultural venture these days for us to provide ecosystem services and try to get paid for it in addition to food production. What we've found on our farm is with our high organic matter, we're able to sequester 92,000 gallons of water per acre. And that mitigates flooding concerns for our community right here in Deansboro. They don't even know it. The problem with delivering this resiliency is we get compensated for this service by how many pounds of food we produce or whatever, and it's just not enough. So I'd kind of like to have you folks maybe take a comprehensive look into the merits of us practical farmers delivering not just food production, but measurable and marketable ecosystem services to New York. I believe it supports our goals for enhancing working farms, keeping lands and agri production, and giving us a little financial viability for us on the land. And it also helps our state with our climate action goals. So that's kind of what I'm harping on a little bit today, but I see that Microsoft and Land O'Lakes just inked a $3 million deal for carbon credits for farmers in, I think, Iowa. And so it's something that's been on the table for a long time, but I think maybe it's another chance for you folks to maybe look at it. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. This is great. And I can speak for me, and I think many of my colleagues that I agree. I mean, our ag community and our farmers are critical to climate change initiatives and should be and are a really important part of that conversation. So we should be doing everything we can to make sure that farmers like yourself are able to do the work to get there too. So I really appreciate your testimony.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too. Great. Our next speaker today is Ray Dykman from Dykman and Sons Inc. It's in Montgomery County. I think you are muted, Ray. Oh, I might have skipped one. I'm sorry. Well, are you there? We can, okay, we will go. I might have skipped over the list here, so I will write us back in order. We've got Jeff Williams, sorry, Jeff, from New York Farm Bureau. Thank you. Sorry, Ray, we'll come to you next. Sorry for my reading of my list.
Ray can certainly go first. That's fine with me. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today and meet with you all. I'm Jeff Williams. I'm the Public Policy Director at New York Farm Bureau. And if you're not familiar with New York Farm Bureau, we are an advocacy organization for farmers. We've got 15,000 farmers as members. We're a trade association, and we advocate for the agricultural community. And farms in New York State are all shapes and sizes, which is really makes New York unique compared to some of the Midwestern states. Our commodities are so varied, and our sizes are so varied, from very small farms to larger family farms. And we run from the east end of Suffolk County to the Canadian border, all the way out to the western part of the state. And we're, as I said, we're very diverse. And it's been said before by a number of speakers, but COVID really did lay bare the problems with getting food from upstate New York to urban consumers. It started off with the fact that we produce about 50% of what we produce goes to restaurants and schools. So when we shut down last year, we lost 50% of our industry. The processing plants that we would sell to were set up for large scale institutions or restaurants. So not many families can make use of 25 pound bag of mozzarella cheese. It just, the quantities weren't at all usable for grocery stores. And so that's where we saw some of the backlog or some of the empty shelves. And so farms had to, dump milk for a period of time. And there was a lot of economic pain in the industry, which has eased a bit, but no one ever gets rich farming. And so has been mentioned before, one of the major help supports was Nourish New York program. We worked with the Northeast Dairy Producers Association and the New York Vegetable Growers Association, among many others, to sort of do an embryonic Nourish New York program before it was even put into place, where milk and other products were being transported at farmers' expense down to New York City into districts in the 5 boroughs. And farmers have always done that, but Nourish New York actually pays farmers for their contributions to food banks, which is just a groundbreaking change because it's not revenue neutral. If you still need to get the food out of the fields, process the food, and transport the field, and that's all has been done to the farmer's expense. Nourish New York helps defray those costs, and we have a great partnership with Dan and others. So that's where, honestly, where budget funding really does come for ag programs really does come into account, because in my opinion, the agriculture industry has been ignored when it comes to the budget for the last 20 years. I'm sure we always fight for the same appropriations for promotion and research and many other things, but the funding has been flatlined for 20 years. And so there hasn't been any true investment into these programs, which were obviously a bad year to do it. But if we're going to continue to build these bridges between consumers and farmers, we need to see that investment, because we take that very seriously. And again, farms aren't getting rich by any means. For a period of time over the past couple of years, at least dairy farmers have been making milk and producing milk for consumers and not getting any money. It costs more to make that milk than they're getting back in their checks. And with global competition, national competition, and labor rates in New York that are much higher than competitor states, it's really tough to farm in the state. And farmers love to farm. That's why they do it. And I know some good farm leaders who are on food stamps while they're paying well above minimum wage to their employees. So it's something that we and they are completely dedicated to and want to continue to help solve that problem. And that's what New York Farm Bureau is here to help all of us do.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate that. I would ask one question. I know there are many, but if you could kind of sum up, the biggest issue facing, I think you're in a unique perspective with the Farm Bureau, if you could sum up kind of one of the biggest issues facing the agricultural sector in New York, what would it be?
We could do so much more if labor costs were lowered in the state. New York is always extremely high cost of doing business compared to other 49 states. The farm labor bill that was passed 2 years ago and the minimum wage increases have really, really impacted the ability of New York farms to actually farm. When Pennsylvania's minimum wage is $7.25 and ours is $12.50 and going up to $15, and when a wholesaler calls and wants a quote on a price, it's extremely difficult for us to compete with our competitor states, let alone other countries. And so it would even be better if the federal government increased their minimum wage, because at least they have a better, more level playing field. But right now we're just hanging out there against everybody else in the country.
Thank you. I see a question from Senator Brisport.
Hey, it's me, Senator Brisport. And again, thanks, Senator Hinchey, for organizing. And Jeff, thanks so much. That was really informative. I had some follow-up questions about some of your statistics on dairy. One, because I heard you mention that someone's being dumped earlier. I was curious if you knew if that practice was still happening anywhere in the state. I see. Okay, so I saw you nodded.
It is not. No, it's not happening anymore in the state.
Gotcha. And then I also heard you mention later too of just I would love to learn more about the pricing. I think I heard you say like it costs more in some cases to produce than it does to actually sell it. Can you just elaborate on that?
Yeah, and that's just the cost. That's just the cost of doing business in the state and the vagaries of federal milk marketing and price setting. But there's certain times the milk prices fluctuate on a daily basis, and when supply and demand come into play and there's too much supply and too little demand, prices go down. And so you still have to milk the same number of cows. You can't stop a processing line or a factory line. You're still milking the same number of cows. And so your check goes down. So there was a time for a number of years where farmers were losing money every day by milking cows. Does that help?
Great.
But I'd love to follow up with you, Senator Brisport, on set up a meeting and talk further about this.
I would love that. I'm going to put my email in the chat. That'd be great.
Sweet. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much, Jeff. Great to hear from you as always. And now I am going to turn it over to our next speaker, Raymond Dykman from Dykman and Sons Farm in Montgomery County. Good to see you again, Ray.
Can you hear me?
There we go.
Oh man, I'm telling you, I'm sorry about that. Technologies. I'm used to being around cows, not computers. So I'm very sorry for that.
You're
good. I was getting
the perils of Zoom that we always have. No worries.
So I missed some of the other ones because I was fooling around trying to get myself off the other one. But I really want to thank you for being proactive on some of this stuff. I think agriculture in this state is struggling, and we're in trouble. I mean, many agricultural people haven't made any money since 2014. I want to really thank Dan Egan for some of the comments about the food banks, because I've been harping on that for how can we have people going hungry in this country and other countries, and yet we're dumping product down the drain. I mean, we were one of the farms that did donate product. When we were, instead of dumping it down the drain, we donated it so we could get it to the food banks. So I had a couple bullet points that I wanted to hit on in a short time, and one is I'm very concerned about the stepped up basis being eliminated for agricultural businesses, and I do see why they're trying to do some of that, I guess, but the stepped up basis for taking over a dairy farm or other farms is going to be brutal. I won't be able to turn the business over to my son. He'll be taxed so high on that he'll never be able to afford to be in business. And so I think you're going to have a lot of problems with the stepped up basis. The second bullet point that I wanted to touch on is coming up in November again. We're going to have the 3-person panel that's going to be going over the
We might have lost you. Ray, if you can hear me, you might have froze. Upstate New York broadband. I hope we talk about that today too. All right, well, let's see if we can get him back. And in the meantime, we will turn it over to our next speaker, and maybe our team on the back end can connect with Ray and we can try to get him back, even if it's just by phone. That would be great. Senator Comrie, do you have a question?
No, I wanted to thank Ray for his distribution. I hope that he could talk about his struggles with continuing to do distribution, because there still is a major food insecurity need downstate, and why he was not able to continue that. But I want to thank him for what he was doing and the other farmers as well. Just wanted to take the opportunity to thank you, Senator, for putting this together, Senator Hinchey, and I'm glad to be part of the Food and Agricultural Committee, and I look forward to working with you and getting not just the feedback today, but making sure that we can take some real actions to help the farming community in and around the state. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. I know it's a very busy time for all of us, and I really appreciate you and all the senators who have joined us today to hear these. And we will work to get Ray back so we can hear more of his testimony, because I know he's in the thick of it. So appreciate that. But while while we do that, we will turn it over to our next speaker, who is Sarah Dressel from Dressel Farms in Ulster County.
Good afternoon. Thanks again for having us today. I think this is a really great way to start it out. There's obviously a lot of topics that a lot of people are talking about. I'm fortunate enough to be downstate enough to have decent internet. It's expensive, but I have it. So I'm sorry to all the upstaters who don't. But since I can't really speak to the poor state of upstate broadband, my main focus for today is about the Senate Bill 699 about banning pesticides like neonicotinoids and glyphosate. My family owns and operates a commercial farm in the Hudson Valley. We have about 300 acres of apples, anywhere from 5 to 7 acres of strawberries. In a given year, we have peaches, we have pumpkins, we have pretty much everything. We're mostly a wholesale commercial apple orchard. Our distributor sends our apples all up and down the East Coast. But we do also have a retail stand and you pick strawberries and apples as well. Pesticides is something nobody really likes to talk about. Nobody likes to apply pesticides. Nobody likes the idea of having anything on their food that isn't out there in the world. But the EPA goes through rigorous standards to certify pesticides. And then in New York, we have the additional burden of the DEC regulations. So very few pesticides actually become registered in New York on the regular, and they go through ruling and extensive peer review and scientific review. And so having legislature that in turn, bans pesticides kind of negates and circumvents all the hard work and all the scientific review that the DEC and the EPA both do. So it sets a poor precedent for scientific review in the state. Growers have to go through recertification for pesticide applications. All of our employees are trained in pesticide safety, even the ones who are not applying pesticides. We all try to use IPM, integrated pest management, as much as we can. We try to use things like mating disruption with pheromones so that we don't have to spray. You basically put a little twist tie out for some insects. But again, that's really labor intensive and really expensive to do. So trying to figure out more cost-effective ways to do that. So funding for things, I'd rather see the legislature fund things like the integrated pest management program, give more funding to Cornell, Cooperative Extension, DEC, really let ag and markets and DEC work together to figure out what is safe and what isn't safe, rather than legislators who aren't necessarily scientists telling scientists how to do their jobs. It's already, as Jeff said, and everybody else has said, it's really hard and expensive to do business in this state. And a lot of these newer chemicals are really expensive also. And they're so specialized for each individual pest that, you have to generally use a couple different kinds to cover the whole spectrum of the pests that are in the state. As we encounter more and more invasive species like the brown marmorated stink bug, the spotted winged Drosophila, there's just a ton of diseases and pests out there. And I think it's best if we let the scientists, really do their jobs and support them in whatever way we can. So thank you again.
Yeah, thank you. I see Senator Comrie. Is that still a new hand or old hand?
That was an old hand, but thank you, Sarah. I forgot to take my hand down. I'll lower it for now. Oh, they took it down. But thank you for your feedback, Sarah, and thank you for the information about the Senate pesticide bill as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, our next speaker is Ronald Wagner from Wagner Farms in Oneida, Wagner Farms Event Center from Oneida County. Sorry, I cut you a little short there.
That's not a problem. Thank you. It's actually Wagner Farms and Wagner Farms Event Center. We're sort of a diverse farm. We've been farming for 23 years now, and we started out small. We became one of the Rome's, we're in Broome, New York. We became one of Rome's largest produce growers for many years. And unfortunately, we are in a economic downturn in farming where we are in central New York. And because we direct retail everything, our customer base is either unfortunately dying off or becoming economically depressed to the point that they do not buy from farmers any longer. Instead, they go to Walmart or big box outlet stores where they sell stuff at such ridiculously low prices that it affects us to the point that, you know what, we find other alternatives to do and continue farming. Success in farming is the ability to adjust and adapt and overcome what we do every day. So about 3 years ago, we started planting sunflowers and sort of became the Oneida County sunflower farm. And this last year, actually under COVID, we saw a 300% growth in business. We're probably one of the only farms in Central New York that can say that we had 300% growth in business. That accounts for sales tax revenues are up 150% from other years. We literally put through 50,000 people through our event center last year, third year doing it. We redid the whole entire event center from just a field to actual buildings, and we redesigned it all to meet COVID standards long before they were actually standards. My background actually is, I used to work for New York State as a HVAC engineer for the prison system in the medical buildings. So my background is sort of PPE, PPE and protective. Everything we do in farming is about protecting the general public from something or other that can harm them, including harming ourselves. One of our biggest problems, like I said already, is trying to find new customer bases that are financially well off that can actually afford to support local farms. We actually currently pull about 75 to 80% of our customer base from 45 minutes or farther away. We pull people as far away as Long Island, Pennsylvania, Canadian border, all the way out to Buffalo and Rochester area into our farm in Central New York. Even under COVID, we pulled from that area last year. Those are the people that are coming longer distance. Those are the people who actually support, ironically, the local ag, because they have money to travel. They come to the farm for the sunflowers. They come and have a good time, and they are actually willing to pay premium dollar, top dollar for fresh local produce that after 23 years of growing produce, if I relied on my produce sales last year, I would have been bankrupt by June. Simple as that. All-time record low sales in produce. And that is from 10 years ago where we were farming roughly 70 acres of produce to last year we were under 7 acres of produce. And again, we do retail direct sale at a premium price because we can get it. The key to success is being able to adapt and overcome and find alternative methods. Farming is finding better ways. Along the way, we've taken initiatives such as, or discussed by one of the other gentlemen, we have become sort of conservationists of the land. What we used to lose in crops to the deer and the wildlife on the farm, we now plant cover crops and plant crops that are lost to the animals intentionally to prevent damage to the major cash crops. The sunflower crop, ironically, is not harvested for seeds, not harvested for human consumption. It's left standing for wintertime for the birds, the wildlife, habitat, natural creation. It actually acts as a windbreak for the wind blowing to wind. We do a lot of different things. This last year, we actually became a green energy producer ourselves. We put in a corn boiler system that actually burns corn that heats our greenhouses. And actually, in turn, that greenhouse heat is actually generated through one of our grain drying systems. So we're using corn to generate heat to dry the corn. That then we actually retail sell that corn, and that corn either goes for animal feed or alternative heating energy sources for a few customers that we retail to for stovetop. Again, if farming is to succeed, Farming has to adapt and adjust to the demands that are currently there, not what was there yesterday, not what's there 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I would never have thought I was going to be crazy enough to plant sunflowers, and that half of my seed bill is sunflower seed. That's just the case for this 2021 year coming up. Our sales projections for our farm this year are actually to double last year's record, and that's based on value added, alternative, or adding food service on site where we do farm to fork dinners and farm to fork food trailer service, additional sales that our retail customers are looking for. Again, farming has to adapt to overcome. The cost of doing business is the cost of doing business. We all choose to be in New York State. Years ago, 20 years ago, when I had employees, I paid my employees $10 an hour. At that time, minimum wage was $6.50. We haven't had employees for the last 10 years because I can't afford it. I farm for a living. I do not have health insurance. I haven't had health insurance since I quit working for the state. I pay my bills. I buy equipment as needed, find ways around things. However, for this 2021 year, I'm looking to put on 30 new employees at better than minimum wage for our event center. It would be really nice if we could get help from the state or from local governments instead of red tape and the runaround when we do ask for help. My advertising budget went from $7,000 3 years ago to $33,000 this last year. Again, I was one of the only ones in Oneida County that actually put more money into the local economy. I kept my advertisers busy, filled in where other businesses let off. I stepped up and overcame. I saw growth. Other farms can do the same if they're willing to adjust and adapt. Yes, there's a difference between a wholesaler and a retailer. However, I chose to be a retail direct sales because I control all of my outcome. If I fail, it's my own problem, not somebody else's that is cheating me out of money.
Right.
On that, I'll end my little non-rehearsed thing. But we do succeed up here in Central New York, and we do rely on other outside areas as our income.
Thank you so much for your testimony. That's really informative and really appreciated. Thank you. I think you're right on a lot of fronts in figuring out new markets and how we can make sure, I think we've moved into a space where people expect kind of, cheaper on demand food, and we've got to recognize that the value is on locally grown healthy food and kind of shift back the paradigm in that direction. So I really appreciate your comments today. So thank you very much for participating.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And I think we are joined again by Ray. So I think I will give you a moment. I think we might maybe keep the video off for internet, but we are going to throw it over back to you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I don't even know where I was, but I'm sorry once again. But with the minimum wage rules going up, I mean, especially on the foreign labor end, I get no credits for the housing and things like that. I mean, I can give them a little bit, but I mean, the minimum wage is going up, and the overtime rules is really hurting us in the future. And come November, they're going to be going over that again. And my employees don't want it. I don't want it, but people will do what they have to do. And then I will make adjustments of what I have to do. I think losing dairy farms in New York State is very detrimental to this state. We still are, I believe, third or fourth in the country in milk production. And I just think it's unfortunate that our expenses are so much higher than our neighboring states with the way the labor rules. We can't compete with them. And let alone our processors, they don't build in this state. In fact, we lost a big processor in New York City, which we ship to. We don't have many processors anymore. I'm an independent, so I'm kind of out in the middle of nowhere most of the time. But I think eventually, the only reason that farmers stay in New York State is not so much that is I've been here. My dad started farming in 1947 after World War II, and my brother and I took it over in 1979 and been here ever since. There are other states that would be a lot more feasible to be farming in. But with that being said, I just think that we rely too much on the resiliencies of farmers. We don't quit. We stay in it no matter what. And, we're here for the long haul, and we get beat down time and time again, but eventually the camel's back is going to break and we're not going to be able to be here anymore. And I will, like the other gentleman said, I will find other ways to do this, as I'm not looking for any handout. I'm looking for working with the processors to figure out what they need, working with the food banks to see what they need. And you know what? If eventually I have to go by the wayside, I have to go by the wayside. It is what it is. But I have to be competitive with surrounding states. So other than that, I guess that's pretty much all. I definitely said I would share my 2021 budget with anybody that wants to see it. We're not making a lot of money, but we're resilient.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining. I mean, I know that I speak for me, and I think many of my colleagues are committed to making sure that we can keep New York ag in New York, and making sure that you can pass your family farm that was started in your family in the 40s onto your sons, right? We want to make sure that we can keep that going here. So we want to work with you and identifying and figuring out what is best for us to do to be able to help you get there. So appreciate your testimony today.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Not seeing any hands. I'm going to go to our next speaker, and that is Brian Reeves from New York State Vegetable Growers Association. You are muted, Brian. There we go.
Okay, got it now?
Yes.
Hi. Well, I'd like to thank you, Senator Hinchey, and the Senate Ag Committee for conducting this hearing session. I think it's an important, good start. I'm Brian Reeves. I'm president of the New York State Vegetable Growers Association and also a partner in Reeves Farms, which is about a 300-acre vegetable and berry farm in Baldwinsville, New York. The vegetable industry in New York is very diverse. All ends of the state have vegetable production. The New York State Vegetable Growers represents several hundred vegetable growers in the state, and both processing and fresh market. And New York, as you may know, ranks pretty highly in several categories of vegetables: cabbage, sweet corn, onions, and snap beans are four that come to mind. So it's a very important industry for our New York State economy. Also, some of you may be familiar with Rick Zimmerman. He's works with us in the vegetable growers, and so sometimes you may be speaking with him, but he does a great job representing the industry. If nothing else, the pandemic has showed us the importance of keeping a strong and diverse regional economy, and at its core, a strong food system is necessary too. The subjects I'll touch on today are predicated towards that end. Number one, New York is a relatively high-cost state to do business in. Taxes and fees and labor costs are leading the way. It's increasingly difficult to compete with produce imported from Canada, Mexico, and neighboring states. For instance, upstate's minimum wage this year stands at $12.50 per hour, and the H-2A minimum wage stands at $15 per hour. The H-2A program, I don't know how much you people are familiar with it, but it is very important to a seasonal industry like vegetable growing in New York State. We have peak times of the year where we maintain and harvest vegetables, but then there's other times of the year you can't do any of that, and you don't need nearly as big of a labor force. So the H-2A program is essential. So at any rate, many workers in this year on vegetable farms will be making a minimum of $15 an hour. That rate, to keep in perspective, that rate is about 10 times the pay rate that farm workers get in Mexico when they work. The state minimum wage, for instance, in Pennsylvania, a neighbor of ours, is the federal minimum, which is 7.25 an hour. I don't think there's many farm workers working for 7.25 an hour in Pennsylvania, but there's no upward pressure on wages when it's that. So you can hire workers at $10 and $12 instead of 15. And up in Canada, the minimum wage right now is about $11.20 US for adult farm workers, and there are several exemptions to that amount that you have to pay. And for under 18, it's a $10.50 an hour. As you know, in New York here with our minimum wage, there is no such thing now as a training wage or a student wage or anything. So this year, if I hire a 16-year-old kid or whatever that's never had a job, $12.50 is what I pay him an hour. And sometimes these guys don't know much. They need to be trained. They need to have a certain period of time so they can become a productive worker. But there's no allowance for that in New York now. Many states have that allowance. None of these locations I've mentioned have any overtime for work on a farm, and whether based on hours in a week or on a day of rest situation, which in New York now, you know, we do. Labor is far and away the largest expense category on a vegetable farm. So these differences have major impacts. It's not like it's a very small part of our expenses. It's a huge part of our expenses. Many fresh market vegetable farms, that's pretty much the fresh vegetables and fruit that you see in the grocery store. Many of them will run 40 to 50% of their expenses as labor. So it has a major impact on the bottom line, the cost of labor. Certain buy local programs and help promote New York vegetables are a little bit of a help, but the fact is we are working in a very high cost state to do business in, and they have minimal impact because after all, many of our customers are about saving money. So they go to where they can go to the cheapest. And some other points about the labor thing. The labor bill that was passed a couple of years ago, we negotiated in good faith to compromise at 60 hours in a week before overtime kicks in. The big concerns I have about that threshold moving downward, let's say towards 40, is there are many of my guest workers, they come from Mexico with the H-2A visa. They've told me they won't come here if it gets much below 60, because they can go to almost any other state in the union and get 70, 80 hours in a week. If you think about the reasons why many of us have jobs with 40 hours a week, well, two things end up happening. One, many of us want to work more and we end up getting a second job because we're mobile. These guys aren't very mobile. They don't have vehicles. It's not like out in the country. There's a lot of other businesses they can go work at for 10 hours a week. So they're going to pretty much work on our farm. And so they don't have the advantage that other people have to get a second job, as it were, with overtime, because many businesses limit. They don't want to pay overtime, and they limit how many hours you can work. The other thing is when we have time off on our farms, or not on our farms, in any of your lives, you go play golf, or you spend it with your family, or you do some other social activities. These guys have left their families behind for 3 or 4 or 6 months a year to come here and work. And so they don't have them there to spend time with on the weekend. So to a person, they're like, just give me all the hours you can give me. And at $15 an hour this year, you can see how that quickly becomes $22.50 for overtime. And that's a pretty darn good wage when they're not paying any rent and they're not paying for any utilities. And we, in trying to compete with Canada, Mexico, and the other states, you can't pay very much of that overtime wage and stay in business. It's just pure math is what it is. So I'm very concerned about the possibility of this threshold changing at some point. There seems to be a feeling among labor advocates that it's like, I don't know, it's just like the sun's going to come up tomorrow, 40 hours is the referent, and that's what it's got to end up at. And I would submit that agriculture, fresh market vegetable production at least, is different from every other industry there is. They will try to draw parallels with construction. But I say that I've worked construction myself, and there's not a perishability thing in the construction. There is a perishability to the products we produce. Weather and climate affects us terribly.
Hey, Brian, sorry, this is Lee. I just wanted to, you're a little over your time, so I just wanted to encourage you to just finish your point if that's all right. Sorry about that.
I'll submit some written comments here too, because I knew it'd go longer than 3 minutes. But to sum up, that this labor thing is a very critical piece. And if we're going to live in a progressive state like New York, which is fine with me, that's, I'm here. I don't want to live in Arkansas. But we have to realize farmers need to get a better price in order to pay for these social justice movements, let's say. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I see a hand by Senator Brisbois.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for that, Brian. That was very illuminating. Just in like with these labor costs, I'm curious if you've seen a trend of any farms needing to close down or restrict what their operations. Since we've started, since when we've started, the increases in the minimum wage.
I don't know if I've seen a larger exodus, let's say, than normal. You have normal turnover in any industry. But that's why we negotiate in good faith for a 60-hour threshold. We felt agriculture could handle that 60-hour threshold where there was never any threshold before. So I haven't seen it yet, but there's a major difference between the threshold being at 60 hours and maybe some workers work 64 hours, you pay a little overtime, it's close to 60 versus if it's 40. And it's like, holy cow, I got 65 hours of work we got to get done this week. What am I going to do at 40? I know on our farm, we've already made adjustments. We cut back 2 or 3 crops last year, only about 5% each, not a big cutback, but a little bit, because we were concerned both about COVID, quite frankly, and about the overtime provisions. We had to become better managers last year. So in other words, you make adjustments. We manage things better to keep the hours guys work. We're right around 60. We of course, it's basically a mandatory day of rest now because every minute on a day of rest is overtime. That's something that I think there's some legislation been proposed to kind of change that, and that would be a major help. But no, not a lot of big close downs yet. Goes to 40 hours, you're going to see a bunch of guys go to, I'm going to grow corn and soybeans, I'm going to go to mechanized crops, I'm going to cut acreage back. You're going to see a major change in the face of New York agriculture if this thing went to 40 hours. It's beyond management levels.
Great, thank you. And I agree. I think one of the things that we're focused on and committed to in our community is expanding markets and making sure that we can extend ways that our farming community and agriculture community can continue to sell products so that we are increasing revenues across the farms to help offset some of these costs. So I really appreciate your comments. And I also see that we are joined by Senator Ramos here, which is great. So shout out to you, Senator. Thank you for joining. And I know you put some comments in the chat, I think, saying that there has not been indication from the wage board moving towards 40. Thank you for adding that in as chair of the labor committee. And of course, that's something that we'll continue to monitor and discuss. So thanks for chiming in. And Brian, thank you so much for your comments. Really appreciate it today.
One thing I'd throw in is it might be 10% of the entire workforce in the state, H2A, but it's a much larger on vegetable farms. And that's who I'm representing today. Much larger percentage.
Great. Thank you. And our next speaker, jumping right in here, is Alex Jonk from Jonk Family Farms in Greene County.
Hello. Thanks, Michelle, for hosting this. I would just like to, a little bit about us. We're a small farm. We raise pork, beef, and hay to feed our livestock and a little bit for sale as well. The major part of our business the last few years has been selling pork. We're expanding into beef. COVID has actually been a very good thing for us. Our business has really expanded a lot due to people wanting to know locally where their beef and pork come from. Last year we did around 20 pigs. This year we're on pace to do 45. Our business has pretty much doubled. Part of that, and that's just not us, but all around the country and all around the world, that's really kind of changed this year. I've talked to family in Iowa who's having the same issues. There is just not enough processing facilities to go around. Our 2021 dates were all booked in August of 2020, just to make sure we got a date in the door. And that, so for example, I was booking them 6 months before the piglets are even born. In a lot of cases to go to butcher. I'm not even positive I'll have piglets to go to butcher, but I had to get that spot to do it. So, and it's not just limited to butchering facilities. What this state really needs is more processing facilities, whether it be for dairy or vegetables or meat. Processing facilities create value added for our operations. It adds jobs. It just helps the economy as a whole. So I'd really like to push for that, whether it be some sort of startup incentives. You know, I know of a couple people in the industry that would probably start some custom butchering shops if there's some grant money or other kind of money available to get, you know, it's not exactly a small investment. So to get a little bit of money towards that, you know, could go a long ways. A couple other things for us. We're small farmers. We've started from scratch. We didn't, you know, we end up having to get some loans through the FSA to buy our property and buy equipment. I got to say the FSA, federal government's been great to work with. For us, there's been I see a lot of push from different groups right now wanting student loan forgiveness for farmers, saying that was a giant hurdle. For us, that wasn't a hurdle. I still have student loans from my college. And it was just a matter of, you know, we had to find the right fit for our operation. And we really worked hard with USDA to get what we needed to make it work for us. And it can be done. It's the producers or those looking for the loans have to put some work into it as well. The one thing I would say is if we do ever go that route, I really think that it should only be loan forgiveness for those with ag degrees. I think there could be possible fraud and different things. People saying, oh, I've got a such and such degree and I'm going to start farming just so I can get my loan forgiven. That's getting it into the wrong reasons for me. The main thing I really want to talk about today is through this pandemic and even before it, there's a lot of alcohol abuse and substance abuse within the agricultural community that I've seen. I'm dealing with a buddy of mine right now who's been dealing with some suicidal tendencies and alcoholism, and it's I see a lot of people in this industry that's really hard to deal with because you know it runs rampant and it's accepted in a lot of these cases. And me myself, I fought with it for years. I was an alcoholic. I did a lot of stupid things back in my day, and luckily I've been sober 7 years now, but I see a lot of people going down a bad path right now with this pandemic, and it really worries me. And I'd really like to see a lot more funding to go towards New York FarmNet and a lot of other organizations that are there to help farmers. And it's not just in the ag community. Alcoholics Anonymous was a great organization for me to really get my life straightened out. And granted, their own thing, but you know, you talk to a lot of people in the groups, and you know, they said, well, you know, I was in rehab for 10 days, but they kicked me out. And they go, I could have lived there for 60 days and really got cured well, but insurance kicked me out. And there's a lot of help that needs to be done for mental health awareness to get these groups and these organizations and the people the help they need. So trying to keep it quick. Thank you for your time. Any questions? I'll try and answer them.
I really appreciate that, Alex. Thank you so much for being here. And I will echo your comments on FarmNet. We know it's an incredibly important organization and resource for our ag community in general, but especially for all of the points that you raise. And in a moment, in a national crisis that we are facing, a health crisis, an economic crisis, a mental health crisis, we should be really funding those institutions for all communities who use them. So thank you for speaking out on that. It's a really important issue. Thank you. And I don't see any questions. So Alex, thanks so much for being here, for raising that. And we will go on to our next speaker, which is Doreen Barker from Barrow's Farm in Broome County.
How's everybody doing today?
Good, thanks for being here.
You know, we have some problems that we need to work through. You know, I'm going to reiterate what the last speaker just said, and you know, we've got some severe problems with processing. You know, as you can tell from the picture in the background, I raise livestock. It's extremely difficult even to get into custom processors. So, you know, when you're looking at booking out a year in advance, a lot of the processors are now asking for deposits for animals that we don't even have born yet, just to hold appointments. I mean, I don't know if you guys understand, we have 32 USDA facilities here in New York State. As a amendable meat sales, we're actually not allowed to sell any livestock unless it's USDA processed. New York State offers no option outside of that. There's actually 27 other states that do. We don't. I'm not quite sure what the holdup is. Cornell's actually reported that it's just a lack of funding. Maybe that's something that we really need to take a look at. So farmers like myself, who instead of being forced to just custom sell, because that means we have to pre-sell our animals to be able to move them through market chains, we can't sell retail cuts. That limits our efforts to be able to make money within the state. You know, direct sales is a $441 million industry here in New York. That actually ranks third in the continental United States. We're actually second in actual direct from farm to table. We need to facilitate this more. The demand is there. The farms can't fulfill the demand. So what do we do? We as producers work our tails off to produce a good product, but how do we get it from our farms to that table under the current method of what's going on, being locked down to 32 butchers that are now booking into 2022. So there's some problems in the pipeline that I really think that we need to sit down and actually take a look at. Reiterating back that whole processor end of it, we need to figure out how to fix that process chain. And it's not just us, it is dairy. We have a plethora of farms here in New York State. We're not utilizing them to the best of the capabilities for in-state capabilities. You know, we get phone calls from consumers. Sorry, what am I supposed to say? I'm supposed to say to a consumer, I can't sell you 20 pounds of meat because I can't get into the butcher until 2022. That's my concern with what's going on in the world of agriculture right now.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. And you can imagine we've heard that too. And actually Senator May, who I know just had to pop off, I think, but her staff is still here, wrote about in the chat about the need for processing, local and better solutions for local processing. So that's something that we will definitely look into. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks for being here. Our next speaker that we have coming up today is, I'm sorry if I pronounced your last name wrong, correct me as I say it, but Roger Soak from Primrose Hill Farm in Dutchess County. Oh, I'm sorry, I actually skipped someone. So if you are there, hold on. I'm sorry, I need a better grid here. We've actually got Doreen Barker, who I just saw that, did I say that? Or Erica, there's a better process here that I will discover for our next listening tour, I promise. Our next session, we've got Erica Rincon from the National Young Farmers Coalition. Did I finally get us right onto the correct order?
It looks to me like you got it right, and you also got my last name right. So you're doing. Hi, thank you so much for hosting this listening session today and for inviting us to be a part of it. I am Erica Rincon. I am the New York campaign organizer for the National Young Farmers Coalition, where I represent our 7 New York chapters, as well as young farmers from across the state. Our mission is to support the next generation of farmers to ensure that they have a viable agricultural future. And I'm joined today by Wesley Hanna, who is one of the leaders of our Hudson Valley chapter. He's also a constituent of Senator Hinchey's, and he's going to share some of the challenges that he and his peers are facing across the state, who are facing issues accessing capital, securing long-term stable land access, and navigating other structural barriers to viable farm businesses. So I'm going to pass it over to Wes.
Hey, can you hear me okay? Okay, great. Hey, my name's Wes Hanna. So my wife, Bryn, and I run Solid Ground Farm. We're in Lamontville, just outside of Kingston, and we have a 10-acre certified organic farm, veggie farm. So I just wanted to touch on a couple of things. We started our farm just about 6 years ago. We began farming about 6 years before that, and we ended up spending several years trying to find like affordable farmland or just a suitable long-term lease arrangement. We had a lot of false starts, and we did end up, landing somewhere that's been great, but we ended up moving from Greene County down here to Ulster County in that search. And, you know, we settled for a piece of land that is a lot smaller than what we ideally would be farming. It's just the high cost of land in the Mid-Hudson Valley and the fact that we're competing against, you know, folks who are coming up from the city and looking for picturesque second homes is just a huge challenge. And we're actually now at the point where we would love to expand, but being anchored where we are, it's, you know, next to impossible to find additional farmland nearby. So another quick thing I just wanted to touch on is healthcare or health insurance. We know that that's been a huge barrier for many beginning farmers. My wife, Bryn, actually has kept an off-farm job in part because it's allowing her access to health insurance, which as we started a family was obviously really important. And, you know, we know a lot of folks who are just starting their businesses without insurance, which is a huge danger given the type of work, or just as they're starting to make their business plans, realizing that it's a huge financial additional hurdle that, you know, nobody's really planned for as they started to think about farming. Yeah, I guess I'll stop there.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. We have a question from Senator Brisport.
Thank you to both of you. Thank Erica, Wes. Wes, I was curious when it comes to health insurance, you know, when either for, you know, your farm or people you're speaking with, does the New York Health Act ever come up in those discussions?
It does. Actually, Erica, can I ask you to answer that a bit, you know, speaking maybe better for farmers in the region than I can?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I think in 2019, 3 of our then 5 chapters endorsed the New York State of Health Act. And I actually was just in touch with them today because there's been such wide support amongst our chapters to just start the conversation about aligning and seeing how we can support their efforts. So definitely that's something that has come up and that we've historically worked on to support.
Great, thank you very much. I'll ask you a question, Wes. How did you find the land that you moved to Ulster County for?
Really lucky. We had a friend who was farming here and she decided to move out of the state and connected us with the landowner. But, you know, where we were up in the Catskill area and, you know, we had like over the course of a year and a half, signed several, or, you know, started to like work out leases with people and then just realized that we were coming from like vastly different places because they were, you know, what farmland we could find, at least in that area, in this area, it was really like people who had land who wanted it hayed or something like that. They didn't want like a real agricultural business in their, you know, what oftentimes was like large backyard. So yeah, we were, I think, I'm not sure, beyond just saying we were super lucky and it took 2 years of sort of scrabbling around before it fell upon us. But, you know, I think a lot of people might not have ever had that luck. Yeah. You know, but yeah, there are directories out there. I know, you know, I should say that the land trusts that are out there are doing good work, and we, you know, continually are searching those databases to find any additional land that might be in our area.
Great, thank you. And I see a hand raised from Senator Comrie.
Yes, Wes. What are you farming? What are you producing?
We do diversified veggies. So we sell at a couple farmers markets. We were going down to the city for a farmers market before COVID.
No, what are you producing? What do you make? I didn't hear what you made.
Oh, just a little bit of vegetables, okay. Like a little bit of everything. You know, we do a CSA. So sort of by nature of that, we have to grow some of everything.
Gotcha. And you said that what kind of health insurance have you reached out to, and what kind of numbers are you talking about?
Well, I mean, so speaking for myself, I actually qualify for the Family Health Plus. Is that right? Essentials, yeah. So, I mean, I can say that program has been really helpful, but it's not a permanent solution because, you know, we're hopefully going to be priced out of that at some point. But, you know, the moment when we get priced from making whatever it is, $24,000, once we go above that, it's just kind of like, you know, we're going to be hit by a huge additional financial cost.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for the feedback. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think those were all of our questions. So thank you so much for being here and for sharing your story. And of course, as always with the Young Farmers Coalition, really important work. Thank you. Our next speaker, finally, we've got Robert from Primrose Hill Farm in Dutchess County. Please correct me on how to pronounce your last name. I'm sorry.
Hey, good afternoon. My name's Robert Schock. I'm the owner of Primrose Hill Farm in Dutchess County. I'm listed on the program as an individual farmer, but I'm also here representing the Christmas Tree Farmers Association of New York. I'm the 8th generation owner of a 108-acre farm in the Mid-Hudson Valley between Hyde Park and Rhinebeck. We first planted trees in 1962 using seedlings from the state nursery. Stories told around the Sunday dinner table motivated me to get a degree in history, a minor in economics, and to attend graduate school at Cornell. And I started my professional career hired to help Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, an Amish farming area, initiate an agricultural preservation program, which is widely regarded as the best example in the nation of how agricultural and urban development can coexist and thrive. So in our case, Christmas trees allowed us to work on the farm while having professional careers in other locations. We also chose Christmas trees farming because it allowed us to share our property with others. We have a 13-acre wetland that is the headwaters of the Hyde Park water system and hundreds of wells between our farm and that system. Our beacon light atop our highest hill guided air traffic before radar was invented. In the past 2 years, I've given tours of our late 1700 Dutch bank barn to more than 1,000 people, ranging from architectural historians to children who like to learn more about antique farm tools, ice harvesting, and farm life before electricity. Many are surprised to learn that years ago, actually in the 1950s, in addition to milk from a small dairy and eggs, 40 types of fruits and vegetables were grown on the farm, displayed in the market basket competition at the county fair, and sent by train to feed New York City. Our conversion to a fully solar operation in the last year is of great interest to many of our customers at the during the Christmas tree season, and other times we've given tours of that. So our farm is one of many multi-generational farms who are members of the Christmas Tree Farmers Association of New York. It has 300 members and they represent diverse farming throughout the state. We all see the association as critical to our success. This year, more than ever, proved how much our farms mean to families looking to maintain their annual tradition of selecting a Christmas tree. New York State has supported the association for many years with a $125,000 line item for marketing and promotion of the industry. And this funding supports training programs for new and existing farmers in both the science and economics of successful Christmas tree farming through internships and mentorships. The funding informs the public about environmental health or environmental benefits of tree farming. And this year supported training so that our members could operate their businesses while offering safe outdoor experiences. The funds are also used for the association's booth at the state fair, as well as to support National Trees for Troops program that provides Christmas trees for troops around the world. Our association works with the national farming organizations, as well as both Cornell College of Agriculture and Life Sciences and SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry in Syracuse. Along with providing best practices, these organizations perform research specific to our industry, such as selection of species for Christmas trees that minimize the need for disease and pesticide usage, deer management, another big issue, and control of other emerging pests and diseases that can affect Christmas trees. We believe our association and its members are integral to rural economic development, travel, and tourism throughout the state. In closing, I'd just like to bring one fact to mind, that if New York farms supplied all of the Christmas trees purchased within the state, an additional $27 million would be sold, $27 million would be sold, and 5,600 jobs would be created. So our association's dependent on this grant that we received for a number of years now, and look forward to receiving in the future. We do understand the state budget at this time, but whatever you can do to support us would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Where are, if not from New York State, where are people purchasing Christmas trees from outside of our state?
North Carolina is very big, Pennsylvania is big, and the West Coast, even trees shipped in from across country, cut earlier in October and refrigerated and then sent across country.
Wow. I wouldn't have guessed that far. Interesting. I have a lot of thoughts there, especially as it pertains to climate change and keeping purchasing local.
Yes.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for your testimony today. That's a lot to think about. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Chad Meeks from the Hop Growers of New York.
Yes, thank you very much, Senator Hinchey, and for the Ag Committee for putting on this COVID-friendly environment here. This is wonderful. Thank you for doing this. My name is Chad. I am here representing the hop growers of New York. We are a new industry here in the state, mostly prompted back in 2012. The New York passed farm brewery legislation, which really sparks an economic boom across the entire state for craft beverages. This really sparked a bunch of new industries, including ours in hops, barley, craft beverages in general. Fast forward to today, we have over 450 total breweries for a total of $3.4 billion in economic impact. We also have approximately about 100 growers with about 400 acres worth of hop production in the state right now. This has really enabled, as I mentioned, a new industry, but also alternative crops for existing growers. A lot of people in other industries experiencing hardships. Hops has been something that they can jump into as existing farmers. The top issue plaguing the hop growers of New York are really access to unique varieties specific to New York State. About 100 years ago, New York was the hotbed for hops. The majority of the country's hops are grown here in New York State. That has since all been moved out to the Pacific Northwest. So any hop breeding programs that are happening right now exist for hops bred specifically for the Pacific Northwest. A lot of these individual farms have their own programs that have come up with their own hop varieties that are proprietary that we are not allowed to grow here in state. These are large farms with a lot of marketing dollars, and a lot of the new hot hops for the new hot beers are made from these hops. It's not necessarily an even playing field. New York, in fact, is the 5th largest hop growing region in the United States, and we are the only state that does not have a public hop breeding program. So it would be very advantageous to New York hop farmers if we had access to unique varieties that grew better here in New York State as opposed to the Pacific Northwest, just to be a little more competitive. So we are asking for approximately $350,000 a year for 5 years to fund a hop breeding program. This money would be put towards a research scientist and related expenses for a person at Cornell Cal's experiment station in Geneva. it would be, it's broadly agreed upon that the model for this would be a shared IP model where the proceeds of all these hop breeding program would go back into Cornell and the breeding program itself, kind of how New York did with apples. There's a success story with Snapdragon and Ruby Frost. So it would be very similar to those types of programs. This breeding program has experienced wide industry acceptance with organizations like the New York State Farm Bureau, the New York State Brewers Association, Cornell Cows, all the way down to the barley growers and maltsters themselves. It's really the one piece that we are missing in the craft beverage is the hop breeding. There is some confusion in the governor's budget. There's currently a $350,000 ask for hops and barley research. The majority of that money all goes to barley. So there's a lot of confusion where people think that the hops are getting money due to that line item, but in fact we are not. And that money has gone to Cornell and produced some barley varieties. They actually just came out with a new variety this year, and it's been a screaming success. So we are hoping for something similar for the last piece of this craft beverage puzzle for hops specifically.
Appreciate that. Thank you. And no, you're an important component to New York State agriculture. And you answered one of my questions. What was the original reason to shift a lot of that research and production to the Pacific Northwest?
It was really blight. So 100 years ago, we didn't have as many tools in the toolbox as we do today. So New York being a much more wet environment, blight, mildew really moved it all out to the Pacific Northwest where conditions were much drier. I think that we're going to see a turn of the tables where water is now becoming an issue, and the Pacific Northwest won't be as an ideal environment to grow hops, and it'll probably move back here. So if we had our own varieties here, had our own identity here, it could really place us to put us on the map.
Great, thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you very much, and good to know about the budget. So appreciate that. Thank you. Not seeing any hands here. Thank you so much. We'll move to our next speaker, which is Beth Seeley from Farmers Market Federation of New York. Hello. You are muted, I believe.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you were unmuting me or I'm unmuting me. Hi, how are you? I'm Beth Seeley. I'm the Assistant Director of the Farmers Market Federation of New York. We are located in Syracuse. I'm calling you now. I'm talking from my office and had a few connectivity issues, so hopefully they won't bother this next 5 minutes. But thank you for hosting this listening tour. We really appreciate it. I'm going to read a statement that I typed up this morning. Since we don't have a lot of time, I want to make sure I get everything in. I'm going to be talking about our support for vaccinations for our farm workers and farmers market staff. That's who we support and work for, the Federation does. So last year was incredibly challenging for our farmers and farmers markets, as you can imagine, but they successfully kept producing local food and made it available to our communities, instigating a redesign of markets, following the COVID mitigation guidelines, and adhering to the farm safety planning measures. So they really kicked into gear. But all the while, farm workers and market managers and staff are putting themselves on the front lines. As we know, some face difficult, even violent customers who didn't want to follow new market rules like mask wearing. We heard of many instances of contentious situations over the market season, unfortunately, and market managers' hands were tied, having to let the non-mask wearers do their shopping sometimes. So we were concerned about their safety then, and we're very concerned about their safety now. We feel that direct marketing farmers, farm workers, as well as farmers market staff and volunteers should be included in the 1B grouping, the same category that's already allowing grocery store workers, those in food service to be vaccinated. So the Federation has been trying to receive information about their inclusion, but we feel that there's been silence on this issue. We've been sort of, exploring it for a few weeks now, and we just can't get any information on any update on this. We feel there's an urgency also to this matter because the farmers market season is going to be in full swing before we know it. Year-round markets, of course, are still, continuing to be in operation. And they continue to wait for the green light for their vaccine eligibility. We don't want our farm workers to feel unprotected, jeopardizing their ability to bring local food successfully to sell at the market. And we don't want our farmers market staff and volunteers who face the public each market day, ensuring their markets are designed for customer safety, to feel unprotected by not being vaccinated. These worker jobs are difficult enough trying to keep these marketplaces open, and we don't think it's asking too much to keep them safe by granting them the same eligibility given to frontline grocery store workers. But here's another thing. We know that we've heard that some regions are maybe allowing farmers and farmers markets to sign up, but unless it's a mandate, we know that many will be left without that opportunity. And included in the mandate, we would like to see guidelines on what proof these workers will need to be on the list to receive the vaccine. That's sort of the gray area there. Many of our smaller markets are not run by boards of directors or chambers of commerce. They don't have letterhead or pay stubs that could verify their staff position. So we want to know what proof of eligibility can they show? And it's the same with farm workers. What will they need to have to be their proof that they are, a farm worker, farm producer? Many are smaller operations utilizing part-time workers, and we would like the guidelines for proof of eligibility to be clear and as encompassing as possible. Can't say that word. So that our farmers and market staff will not have to be delayed by cumbersome paperwork they may not be able to get a hold of to secure a vaccination date. So that's our statement. And I guess, first of all, we'd love to know if you know any more information on their eligibility. And if we could just urge you to have that, specific sort of mandate for what proof they would need, so there won't be any long waiting and everything, as this time ticks on before our season opens.
Absolutely. No, thank you for raising it. Myself, as the chair of the Agriculture Committee, along in partnership with Assemblywoman Lepardo, chair of the Assembly Agriculture Committee, sent a letter to the governor encouraging and asking him to include farm workers and farmers market workers, et cetera, into the phase 1B of vaccines. And we too had not heard back, but we will continue to follow up on that point because we agree they should be included. So we will keep you posted as we hear more too.
Okay, please do. We'll be anxious to hear.
Absolutely. No, it's important, especially these are places as the weather gets warmer and people are coming forward. It's important to make sure that everybody on the front lines in every capacity is covered and taken care of. So thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, we appreciate that. Thank you for your hard work on this issue.
Thank you very much. And thank you for your testimony and for being here. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Our next speaker is Paul O'Mara from AgriVenture and O'Mara Farms and Growing Upstate Food Hub. Paul, nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Thank you for this opportunity. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we're good.
Okay. So I was perplexed about what to speak about today, and after listening to the previous speakers, I want to emphasize that 3 minutes is not enough time to talk about the plight of and the future of New York farmers, but I hope that you'll get enough knowledge out of these discussions today to start to plot a path going forward. So I did write down so I could stay within my 3 minutes, and I'm gonna do my best to stay there. So as a farmer, a member of a marketing cooperative and an owner of Growing Upstate Food Hub, I would like to speak about the future of New York agriculture. As our nation's farms continue to grow larger in order to efficiently feed the growing population, I fear that it will become more difficult for New York farmers to remain competitive and sustainable. Many of the concerns discussed at forums like these are focused on problems like labor issues, unfriendly business environments, high taxes, and a multitude of problems common to all business. Generally, these problems are overcome by growing larger to gain the economies of scale. Unfortunately, much of the topography and the climate in New York is not necessarily conducive to large-scale farming operations alone. However, as proven by the COVID-19 pandemic, there is an increasing demand for a reliable supply of locally grown food. I would like to suggest that there is a need to continue to support ways to preserve small family farms in New York State. Rather than trying to save the New York farmer with commodity grain, commodity milk, or other silver bullet commodities like hemp, let us consider how we can best use the natural resources in New York to produce safe, healthy, and highly nutritional products locally grown on New York State family farms. Many counties in New York, including my own, Madison County, have created farmland preservation programs and agricultural economic positions focused on increasing the economic viability of New York farmers and preserving as much farmland as possible. I myself have been a member of the Madison County Economic Committee. These committees bring farmers, agribusiness, and community leaders together to accomplish the goals set by their mission statement. I have noticed that most ag committees focus on the same issue. These committees tend to move forward alone and ultimately fail to accomplish the goal. I have felt very strongly that there needs to be more cooperation between these separate ag economic organizations. Working together on common goals would have a much higher chance of success. The issues facing New York agricultural are large. These issues certainly are not only in one county. As a matter of fact, many of these issues are global. I would like to propose a statewide agricultural development organization that would bring all ag economic developers in this state together to work towards a common goal of identifying the best path to move New York agriculture forward into the future. A group effort to continue to adapt to the exponentially increasing changes in food demand, climate change, and the need for sustainability. In conclusion, I would like to hope that there is still a place in agriculture for the small family farm. I believe that farming is still the backbone and lifeblood of our society. The state of New York should do everything possible to preserve that core value. So thank you for this opportunity. And again, I can't begin to tell you what we've worked on with the past 20 years for ag development, and can't begin to talk about all the possibilities and the demands going forward, other than I can tell you that many of the speakers that spoke today, either multi-generational farms or first-generation farmers. Most of us are only maybe 2-3 generations away from farming. And, you know, even in the case of milk production, which is still quite large in New York, if you talk to most dairy farmers today, they'll all tell you the same thing. My father or my grandfather milked 30 cows in a tie stall barn, and today I milk 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 cows. And that's what's going to happen with agriculture. It's just going to continue to grow and get bigger. As a matter of fact, less than a year ago, a research company predicted that by the year 2040, 80% of the food in this world will be produced by 100,000 farms. And to put that in perspective, there's 5 million farms today in the world. So thank you for your time, and hopefully you'll take my thoughts to heart, and we can talk some more about ag economic development in New York.
Paul, thank you so much for your comments. And I agree that that's one of the reasons why we wanted to hold a forum like this in the first place, is we believe that we have to support our small family farms. There is not a New York agricultural market in the way that it should be without that. And we know that there are lots of challenges, which is, again, one of the reasons for this forum to kind of throw things together. And we know that 3 minutes is not nearly enough to go into all of the issues. But on one of the great things is that with this, we had such incredible outreach from so many people who wanted to participate. Over 100 different farmers and groups reached out to participate, which is incredible and shows the the attention that this issue rightly deserves. And so we wanted to make sure that we could fit as many people into a couple day session as we could, but would love to, this is by no means the end of the conversation. So we would love to, and we will reach out to have another conversation with you too, to dig in deeper to some of your ideas of how we can move forward. Appreciate you being here.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next speaker, we are coming to the end here, but our next speaker is John Greenwood from Northern New York Agricultural Development Program.
Yes, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name is John Greenwood, co-chair of the Northern New York Ag Development Program. My wife, son, and I operate a dairy farm in Canton, New York. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you and to request continued funding for the Northern New York Ag Development Program. The New York State Legislature established this program in 1961 in recognition of the unique needs of Northern New York. This program has received funding every year since, except for one. Our research projects are suggested and approved by around 100 farmers serving on various advisory committees. We have a proven track record of results benefiting not only farms in Northern New York, but across the state and in some cases nationwide. Our research supports agriculture, which is a key economic engine of our region. The fiscal efficiency of our program is second to none. 97.5% of our funds goes to research. This number does not take into account the land and services provided by our cooperators. I would like to talk about one of the ongoing research projects that we have. Tile drainage. Tile drainage is used extensively in Northern New York, where it is crucial for growing crops in a region of the state with a shorter growing season and in some cases less well-drained soils. It is also used widely throughout the state, and I probably should let you know what tile drainage is. It's basically we're burying a drain pipe in the fields in a pattern to remove excess water, reduces surface runoff, helps the fields warm up quicker in the spring, reduces compaction, and in general just improves soil health. To quote from a researcher that's doing the work, Laura Kleiber, the use of tile drainage has come under scrutiny as a potential source of excess nutrients in watersheds. Prior to the Northern New York Ag Development Program supported study, little research had been done specifically designed to compare the impacts of common agricultural drainage practice on regional water quality, and now through the continuous year-round monitoring of nutrient movement in surface runoff and tile drainage in farm fields provided for these trials, we are able to generate data to inform field management practices that will help conserve our natural resources. This research project was expensive to set up, and we are really just in the beginning phases of it, and we need multiple years and growing seasons to get accurate data. We can see then that if tile quality, if the tile helps water quality or hurts it, and we can try out different mitigation practices to achieve everyone's goal of good crops and clean water. But these efforts take time, and we cannot start and stop research without losing important data. This is just an example of one program we are doing. We understand the financial difficulties that the state has and is facing. Historically, we were getting $600,000 a year. Last year, this was reduced to $300,000, and we would respectfully ask for $300,000 again this year to continue important ongoing research such as this. I would also add, as others have stated, New York is a high-cost state to do business in. And one of the things that I think has allowed New York farmers to be successful is the investment that the state has made into research, which allows New York farmers to be on the cutting edge of agriculture really across the country. And that allows us to be competitive, even though some of our other costs are higher. I guess that's really kind of my plea to continue funding so we don't lose these important research efforts that are ongoing. And I would be certainly happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Thank you very much. No, we agree that the research initiatives across the state are tremendously important to making sure that we have a strong agricultural market here and can continue to be competitive. So thank you for highlighting those issues. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Not seeing any hands. Our next speaker is Kate Downs from New York FarmNet.
Thank you so much, Senator Hinchey. I just wanted to take a moment and say that New York FarmNet exists to take a holistic approach in helping farmers, farm families, and agribusinesses in our rural communities across New York State. And, you know, that's what helps keep our local food system healthy. It's what keeps our rural communities healthy. And without the funding, the restoration of funding for in ag and markets and for the mental health support for our farmers, for their families, you know, our farmers and their families will be crippled. You know, our program falls under Cornell's umbrella, and it's part of their land grant mission. And as we know, the impact of COVID has had a really detrimental effect on our rural communities, on those farmers. And we are one of the few supports they have by providing these free and confidential services to them over Zoom, which is tricky because of rural broadband, as you know, but also around the kitchen table or out in the barn, you know. So we just appreciate your support, and we hope for restoration of funds, and that includes the mental health support, which will keep our work going and help those farmers get the help they need.
Thank you. I'll ask a question. How have you seen, what has been the increase during COVID for calls and Zooms into FarmNet?
I don't have the numbers right in front of me, unfortunately, so I apologize for that. Our calls to the 800 line have been over 600. We operate an 800 helpline, and actually during the month of March in 2020, we had over 100 calls alone. And that was because people knew we were a trusted resource and we could answer their questions, even if not all of those translated into cases. A lot of the work our family consultants are doing, they have a background in social work. They are fielding questions and calls at all hours of the day. They're hearing from folks who are really, really stressed out. And we've actually seen the personal stress numbers of the cases we do have double, and the financial stress triple. So that's really concerning, because we know on farms, regardless of size, regardless whether they're family owned or not, that those farm finances and that stress level impacts the family stress. So.
Absolutely. And I see Senator Brisport.
Thank you. With the mental health, or just consulting, are you seeing any trends in any particular industries that are asking for that more so than others?
No, we're seeing it across the board in agriculture. We do hear from a lot of dairy farmers because New York is a pretty big dairy state, but actually because of COVID, we are seeing folks from all different industries and commodities reach out for assistance. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you very much for.
Thank you so much, Senator Hinchey, for your support.
And our final speaker of the day is Leanna Hoods from Northeast Organic Farming Association. Apologies if I mispronounced your last name.
That's fine. It's Leanna Hoods. And thank you so much, Senator Hinchey, and for the Senate Ag Committee members for this great forum. It's really been interesting. I'm with the Northeast Organic Farming Association of New York, NOFA New York. We were founded in 1983, and we are the statewide organization that's been there for all these years, growing a strong organic, regenerative, and sustainable ag movement in the state. NOFA New York provides education and assistance to local organic and regenerative farmers, connects consumers with those farmers, advocates policies that support a sustainable and fair food and farm system at both the state and federal levels. And we're the largest USDA accredited organic certifier in the state, currently certifying nearly 1,100 organic operations throughout New York. New York is a top producer of organic products in the US. We rank third in the number of organic farms nationwide, and fourth in acreage, and we certify over 1,900 entities. With one of the biggest marketplaces in the world, New York participates in a huge portion of the over $52 million in organic sales nationwide. And this organic market is growing. It outpaces all other food market growth and has been for the couple of decades it's been around. And New York farmers and New York producers could be supplying this even more. New York needs more organic farms. Studies show that organic practices can reduce farm energy use by 30%. And NOFA New York would like to see New York increase its advocacy and support of organic agriculture and production. NOFA New York could use the state's support in the budget for our current efforts to move the organic certification to seamless online integration, including the ability to apply for federal cost share benefits through the state, as well as the ability to do applications and preliminary inspections right from phone apps. In addition, we've requested of the Department of Ag and Markets, and we request of the legislature that when agriculture stakeholder committees are formed, they include representation for organic agriculture. Organic practices, as well as federally mandated organic rules, can be significantly different than other practices, and organic perspectives and regulatory knowledge are really essential in the work on ag policy. With regards to legislative action, we simply request that when any stakeholder committee is written into a bill and has a mandated for that committee, organic experts or organic farmers be an explicit named stakeholder category. NOFA New York fully supports and thanks you and Assemblywoman Lupardo for the Soil Health and Climate Resiliency Act. That is a big deal for us. Organic farmers, soil is the foundation of what organic farming is about, and we have been using and refining soil health practices for decades. We note in the legislation we would like to see that that farmers be recognized as soil health management experts. There's a listing of what these experts are, and their farmers have lots to say about that. And we would also reprioritize the climate resilient farming program projects to list first the what is currently C, the projects to encourage soil health and resiliency. NOFA New York also supports legislation that puts restrictions on the use of neonicotinoid pesticides that threaten the future of regenerative farming in New York. We urge legislative action in 2021 to permanently prohibit high harm, low benefit neonic uses that were identified in the 2020 Cornell University report, including neonic treated corn and soybean seeds, which make up an estimated 73% of neonics used in New York. And the study found that they provide no overall net income benefits to farmers. So what we're talking about in a bill like this is identifying those high harm, low benefit that were noted in the report, not all neonic uses. And finally, NOFA New York completely supports the constitutional amendment guaranteeing the right of New Yorkers to clean water and clean air. We think that's a great start. So again, we thank you for all your work on this and whatever we can do to answer your questions. I ran through that really fast. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you. No, all important topics. I don't see any hands from my colleagues, but I do really appreciate your testimony today. Thank you so much for being here and for lending your voice. Thank you. That I will just, in conclusion, now that we have run through our first day of the 2-day Senate, first ever Senate Ag Listening Tour, this was really exciting and informative. So I want to thank everyone who presented today. I know 3 minutes is a short amount of time, but it is enough to at least start to have the conversation and get a top line idea of the issues that we are facing here in New York agriculture. I want to thank everyone who tuned in on Facebook Live, as well, as this is a conversation that can't be done in a silo. This has to be done with all of us at the table to make sure that we have access to local healthy food for all of our communities. It's one of the reasons why we have informally changed the name of the Senate Agriculture Committee to the Senate Agriculture and Food Committee, to really drive home how important access to food is, how important the food grown in New York State is, and to help connect the dots for people when they think about agriculture, we think about the food that ends up on our plates, that feeds our bodies and that keeps us healthy. And then everyone across the state, regardless of where you live, deserves to have access to that food. And the things that we can do to help the New York markets and the markets for our farmers expand is something that is absolutely critical. And so forums like this are really helpful for us to start to get there and piece together what we think we need to do to make sure that New York State has a strong and robust agricultural market. New York is an ag state after all, and so we got to make sure that we are supporting our small family farms. With that, I will just say I want to thank all of my colleagues too who joined in today. Again, Senator Brisport, Senator Comrie, Senator Ramos, Senator May, and then staff from some of our other offices. We really appreciate it. And I would give you a moment. I know we are close on time here, but if there are any of my colleagues would like to say anything, I'd like to give you the floor. All right. I know that we are.
I thank you, and I look forward to continuing to work with you as we make sure that the committee is responsive to the needs of the ag community all around the state. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much, Senator. This has been great. So thank you everyone who tuned in, who provided the time, and we will have another one, I believe, next week. So thanks so much for being here.